What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again. And this time we got round two, Apollo of Trivium. Thanks for being here today, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. I actually have a lot to thank you for. One being your time. Two, thank you for giving us two new Trivium albums to wait
Yeah.
out this pandemic, as well as having probably the most positive social media platform of any band on the internet. Like, just thank you for that. I think your
Awesome.
Facebook pages and your Instagrams are always just some of the funniest stuff. You guys are the meme kings.
I'm glad. It's uh, it's nice to be able to put some good stuff out there. I have my moments, but for the most part, it's mostly fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But with Court of the Dragon, this brand new album that's coming out, was this always intended to just be the follow up to What the Dead Men Say, or was this sort of like a spur of the moment idea, just that you and the band came up with, not being able to tour?
No, we didn't have any plan to do a follow up this quick. I mean, we thought we would be well into touring for What the Dead Men Say, into this year for sure. So probably in all likelihood, we wouldn't have been doing a follow up until maybe this year, maybe next year. But once it became apparent that touring was not happening, we just kind of shifted gears and we started talking about, maybe it's good to get a follow up ready for when we hit the road again, because we don't know, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years. We want to have something fresh. And, I think our kind of gut feeling was right on that because, this tour did happen. So we were really lucky to have something new to hit the road with, even though the last record I think was still new to people. So it was kind of a surprise, but I just feel like having something fresh, even if it's been a year or two, it just felt like we needed to have something.
Yeah, I mean, are you at all like when touring does come back, full swing and we don't have to worry about it? Are you
Mm-hmm.
like at all worried like on how the set list is gonna play out? Like you have a lot of material to catch up on. There's always those fans who want to hear some
Yeah.
deep cuts. I think the set list is gonna
Yeah.
be complicated.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. Of course, when it's a headliner, it's not as hard because we have a lot more time to really kind of, get into the back catalog, get the new stuff. Our feeling with this tour, and again, I think our feeling, it was kind of a gut feeling, but we just kind of felt like we were going to come out of the gate and play a lot of the new album and What the Dead Men Say. I think there's like 4 tracks out of 8 songs that we're playing on this tour. We just felt very strongly about it. The reaction online was very strong, and we were just like, it's going to be a lot of new people at these shows, and like, it's kind of a blank slate, so we can kind of do whatever we want really with this set. So we didn't really worry too much about like, oh, we have to do like an old song, or, I think a lot of our fans that are coming to the show want to hear the new stuff. And then all the fans or the people that don't know us yet, it's like we get to show off like the newest wares we got. So that's it's a fun thing to be able to be in this position and, just kind of not worry about like, oh, we have 10 albums now. We got to hit like every single song. It's like not even possible.
Well, people did have a lot of time to digest What the Dead Men Say, and people were really resonating with it. So
Yeah.
I think, I mean, not that I'm saying that the lockdown was in any way good, but I think maybe this gave people to digest it a little bit more. Because I remember when you first released The Sin and the Sentence, and you were doing the tour with Arch Enemy. I think you only did like 2 or 3 new songs off that album.
Yeah.
So I guess now it makes a little more sense to throw a bunch of
Yeah.
new, like What the Dead Men Say compared with Court of the Dragon. That's like a back catalog now. So
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I mean, even when we did The Sin and the Sentence, like I remember we did that tour. I think we only started out doing like 2 songs, and the fans were just like really wanting us to play more from it. We're always a little conservative with like putting new songs into a set right away, just because you want to see how fans react. But I think since that record, people have really been liking what we've been doing on these new ones. So we kind of got the go ahead from them to be like, yeah, like put a bunch of new stuff in the set. We want to hear these things, especially with Alex. These are his records, and I think people really love his playing. And obviously he's mastered all the old stuff, but I think songs that are his obviously have more of his flourishes and like fills and stuff. So that's also, I think, part of it too. It just feels like these songs are just like on a whole nother level now with him behind the kit. So like we want to show off these songs, and I can't wait for people to hear the rest of the record, because I think if you like what the last two records were doing, I feel like this is kind of a level up from that.
Yeah, well, that you led me perfectly into my next question, because with the first two singles that you released, Feast of Fire and the title track, Court of the Dragon, is that maybe a good representation of what the whole album is going to sound like, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
I think it is kind of the tip of the iceberg. I would say it's hard to really take both songs and be like, the rest of the record is this way or that way. I would say most of the record leans more towards In the Court of the Dragon in terms of it's heavier, more intense. But like every song really has like something unique and cool about it. And like, making sure that every song is catchy and has its own riffs and is important to the record, and not just kind of like, the track in between the singles or whatever like that. We wanted to make sure that, it was a very focused album. We had the time to live with it, to rehearse it, and, do the proper pre-production and recording for it. So I think it was really a good, one of the only blessings in this whole, shit show of a pandemic, was being able to just have the time to do this record. And, it's kind of weird because it's kind of a counterfactual, but I'm like, I don't know if the 10th album becomes this record exactly. Maybe none of these riffs are ever kind of born if we didn't have the time to live and sit with it. So, this is, we just took advantage of a really shitty situation and, turned it around the best we could. Made an album for people.
That was one thing I was like thinking that might have been like a blessing in disguise. I mean, pain is a paintbrush, and us metalheads, we learn to, embrace darkness more and conquer it at the same time. So did maybe these dark times, I mean, there's some albums too that have a lot of context. I remember I interviewed Heaven Shall Burn the same day I interviewed you last year. Their album like predicted everything that happened over the past couple of years. So like, do you think that maybe this album has a different type of context given the circumstance that it was written in?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look back, like, I feel like What the Dead Men Say and In the Court of the Dragon are going to feel like just two albums that were kind of like created at this like really just seismic, life-changing moment for us, for the world. And I mean, I definitely think like the record, obviously maybe influenced by the events, but also just like it was kind of an escape from the events in a lot of ways for us. Being able to just kind of lock ourselves in the studio, in our rehearsal room, and trying to kind of isolate the best we could and create the record without, having what's happening around us affect us. And, it was an interesting time, and it kind of felt like one of those things where, using the record as a sort of like thing to keep us focused and not thinking about, wow, like touring isn't happening for like a whole year or a year and a half or maybe 2 years now. And, once we finish the record, that's when you start to really think about like, man, when is this going to ever end enough to get us back out on tour? And so I'm just happy that the record was there to kind of take our focus away from all those like kind of negative thoughts of like, being bummed that the touring's not happening or that we can't really, get out there and support the last record. So this one was made under some weird circumstances, but I do feel like, you can kind of turn these bad situations when you have a channel like us, like we can channel it into music and stuff. So it was very important for us. And obviously I hope when people hear the music, they're able to take that and, use that in their own life. Maybe it's just like looking forward to something, like knowing that new records are coming out, that touring is, back on the horizon again for a lot of places.
Given the times that we were living in, I was hoping that on this tour that you were doing with Lamb of God and Megadeth, that maybe we would hear the ultimate deep cut that I brought up to you before, This World Can't Tear Us Apart off the Crusade. I thought that should have been the encore song.
Yeah, I mean, damn. I mean, maybe we'll get that on one of our live streams eventually
Yeah.
in the deepest cut sets.
Hopefully, hopefully. And, as a fan of Trivium, if you played me 30 seconds of a song, I'd be able to tell that's off of Ascendancy, that's off of The
Yeah.
Crusade, that's off of Silence in the Snow, etc. And, with The Court of the Dragon, I feel like, it always sounds like Trivium, but every album has its things that make it stand out. When it comes to, starting an album, getting into that songwriting process, does it ever start off with like a preconceived idea, like let's go more melodic over here, let's go relentless heavy, or is there a lot of trial and error, a lot of improvising and rolling the dice?
I mean, a lot of it starts with just like the demos and riffs that everyone kind of brings in at first and kind of get a sense of like where people's headspace is. I do think with this record though, because we were following up the last one so immediately, we kind of had an idea of like wanting to take what we built on the last one and just really make it a little more intense and like more proggy in some ways. Because the first song we worked on, I think, was Fall Into Your Hands. And we were like, I think just having the time that we did and knowing that like there was no touring, there was no rush, was like, okay, well, let's like start writing. And we wrote a long song. And it was kind of like from there, that set the tone. And, that's what kind of made me think about wanting to bring the Failings back. That's an old demo we had from Shogun. It was actually a song that like part of the song became another song on Shogun. And that's why it never got used, because it was literally just like the first half, the last half, and then a gutted middle that was taken for something else. And so it's been sitting around for years. And then once we did Fall Into Your Hands, I'm like, well, we have this really epic long song that just needs to be finished again. It needs a new middle part. And that was like my suggestion to bring it back, to change a couple things. And then when we got into the studio with Josh, he had a couple more suggestions for it. And, I think 75, 80% of that song survived from like the original Shogun idea, but the middle section's like a whole new animals. And, it was just cool to kind of bring that back. It just felt like the right time, and once we kind of got like that going, then it just like sets the ball rolling. You're just like, okay, we know what this record's going to feel like. So then we kind of know what does the album cover need to feel like? What does it need to look like? How does it represent this? So like, I think you just got to get that first thing going. And once you get the first idea or two, like recorded, demoed, then you kind of can be like, okay, we're going this way and let's go that way. And, we only write now like what's going to be on the record. We don't go beyond that. It's like, okay, we're doing 10 songs. That's it.
Okay. So no like B-sides or like,
no,
okay.
That's not anymore.
It
used to be, I think that's a thing of the past because like, you do exclusive records and stuff for the stores and there'd be a B-side here and there. I think now what we'll do is if we do need an extra track, we'll just record it. So we'll make it as it's like ordered. Essentially.
Okay. That's actually a good idea. It
yeah.
leaves people more hungry. And, I have to say that as a consumer, that feels really good that I don't have to, give my computer cyber aids with like any website like LimeWire or YouTube to MP3 converters.
Yeah. I definitely prefer, just in terms of creativity, to be able to go, okay, 10 songs, that's 10 sets of lyrics, that's 10 songs with all these riffs. I mean, we have a lot of riffs in our songs. So like by the end of a record, you're talking maybe at minimum, maybe like 40 to 60 kind of riff ideas and melodies and stuff. And like, it's a lot to take in. And I remember when we had to used to like try to do like 14, 15 songs. And it sucks because like you're really trying to make every song album worthy. And then you have to cut some or keep them for other things. And it was just always such a weird like conversation at the end of making something, and now that we're not doing that, it's like, it's a lot better. And I feel like, if something comes up, like say a movie or game needed a song exclusive, I would rather just write it on the spot. And now with like our Hangar studio situation, we'll be able to do that a lot easier and, can turn it around quicker than like, okay, we have to get into a studio, we have to do all this and that. A lot easier now.
Definitely. Couldn't agree with you more. And now I kind of want to go back to the past a little bit, turn back the clock a little bit, because this year is the 10-year anniversary of In Waves. And, every time I've seen Trivium, you've always ended with that song. And, that song, but that whole album in itself has a lot of memories. You know, I mean, that
Yeah.
album came out on the week of SATs in high school when I
Wow.
was 17, yeah, and I did horrible, and I blame you guys. No, I'm
Um,
kidding, but just out of curiosity, what was the sort of like memory, like, or the mindset going into In Waves in a way? Because I mean, going from I felt like it was such a leap between albums such as Ascendancy or The Crusade or
yeah.
Shogun. Like, what was the sort of mindset of Trivium at that time in a way?
Well, I think it was like it's kind of a changing of just the like, kind of changing of the guard in terms of like, we have a new drummer coming in. Obviously, we go through a drummer change, the first drummer change. So that was a big moment, all of that happening. I think Shogun was such a dense album. It was like a real challenging record to make. Obviously, a very proggy, more just dynamic record. And so I think with Nick in the band at that moment, we were just kind of like, we had done I think it was before the record, we did Shattering the Skies Above, which was kind of like the first track with him in the band, and Slave New World as the cover. And we just kind of like, I don't know, we just kind of wanted to kind of strip it back a little bit, kind of be a little bit more intense, a little more fast paced. I think it kind of brought a lot of that sort of kind of underground, more intense drumming into the studio. So we were just kind of like, let's roll with this. And, I think that record was kind of an interesting moment for us because it really introduced like some new elements into the band. We never would have thought that like that was going to be the record that really helped to break us in Europe. Because UK Ascendancy was kind of the record. That was the one that really broke us out there. And I think in the States as well. But like Europe, it took a bit. And by the time we did In Waves, it was like the right record at the right time. The song resonated. We had a big performance at Vakken. And it was just like, I don't know. It was just kind of like we kind of needed to get away from what we did on Shogun. And, I think the first part of our band, the first couple of years of our band were really like, kind of like moving away from ourselves from record to record, where I feel like now since Cinema Sentence, it's been like a real, like, we kind of know what we want to do, and it's not about reacting to the record and being like, we got to be so different now, or we got to go this way because we did this. It's really just like a collective of all the stuff we do best. And we just try to perfect that record to record, song to song. But back then, I think it was kind of like we were always, we were reactive to ourselves in a lot of ways. And in Waves, I mean, from Shogun is a big leap, but now it's like you can play songs from either of those records and it fits so well in the set. But it did feel like a big jump,
Definitely. I've noticed, like, my way of analyzing the Trivium catalog is it's almost kind of like eras in a way. Like, I thought that, like, Ascendancy and Ascendancy and The Crusade kind of are like brothers and sisters in a way. And then I thought that albums such as In Waves, Vengeance Falls, and maybe even Silence in the Snow, I thought was Trivium more or less embracing its experimental side in a way.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
People said that they heard elements of Gent on In Waves. People said that they saw like elements of, like Disturbed on Vengeance Falls, that sort of like more melodic side, and Silence in the Snow really embraced the melodic side of Trivium in a way. And now I think, from Sin in the Sentence onwards, I feel like you really have been able to experiment without being all over the place, and you're able to stay consistent without being repetitive.
Yeah. It's definitely gelled. I think like having, obviously Alex in the band again, it's like the consistency from record to record is a lot more present. And we're also just like, we're so much more focused on the music as opposed to like, okay, well, who's back behind the kit? What are we doing now? And worrying about all this other stuff outside of like just making the music. And, but every record, you got to go in and you got to try something different. And, even the records where I'm like, maybe it didn't fully see through the vision we had or what we would have liked to, like, when I listen back, there's so much good stuff that I do love about it, like riffs or particular songs or, just what we kind of learned making a record. There's never been a record in our career that I'm like, oh, like I would take it back now. Cause I'm like, it always led to something really good. And now I feel like everything I feel very vindicated, like everything we've been through, because the last 3 records are like some of my favorites. They're just such good like visions from start to finish that we were able to feel like we completed. And it's nice when you hit the end of the record and you're like, okay, we did it. We did everything we set out to do on this one, as opposed to like a year later feeling like, oh, I wish I would have done this or that, or I'd do this better if I could.
Yeah, well, I think, and with these two, with Court of the Dragon and what the Dead Men Say, I think that's going to be like the soundtrack to the COVID times in a way, like the way that like the way that swing music was the soundtrack to World War II. I think when they talk about this in history classes, they're going to be playing what the Dead Men Say.
Yeah, I mean, it's I kind of like view them as almost like a double record in a way. It's like kind of released at separate times, but they were both made under. One was released under weird circumstances. One was made under the weird circumstances, and like they're close enough to me in time that like they feel like they're connected somehow. Whether it's COVID or just the timing not being that long in between making and releasing both of them. So, playing it live now finally and really debuting both new albums at the same time technically to these live audiences has been, it's been fun. It's been really surreal. It's surreal to think that we're on our second to last show of a tour after 2 years. And I feel like just going home is going to feel like a whole weird experience because I've only been at home for 2 years. And it was weird leaving and weird coming back.
Yeah. I have 2 more questions for you if we have time.
Yeah.
That's cool. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about your bass playing a little bit as well, because, this is rock and roll. I'm sure we've all we've seen our fair share of bass player memes. But music lovers, bass is, I feel like, such an important instrument because it has an emphasis on both rhythm and melody at the same time. For you, when it comes to tracking your bass playing or writing bass parts, do you prefer to have riffs or drum patterns written down before you get a clear vision, or have you ever written a whole bass pattern and maybe that helped influence the whole composition of the song?
I mean, I write a lot of guitar stuff in the band. I write a lot of riffs and songs, so it's like I kind of wear a couple hats within the band in terms of that. So like I find like writing to the other guy's songs is fun because I don't have a riff I wrote in my head. So sometimes it's easier to think of new things when I'm jamming off of their idea. With my own ideas, like I think it's maybe because I wrote a riff, I kind of wrote it to like fit the way I like to play stuff. So like I'll tend to maybe want to, play along to the riff because it's like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like in Waves is a good example of like, I wrote that riff on guitar, but I knew that it would feel good on bass too. And I like, I wrote it almost that way. And so it's like, it's cool to be able to kind of vibe off other people's stuff. It's cool to be able to write stuff on guitar and have it translated over to the other guys and see how it develops. And then of course with like drums, sometimes you got to get in there and start actually playing. And then once maybe Alex writes a drum part, I start to kind of feel like, oh, okay, my part can play a little bit different than how I was anticipating it before. Once you kind of get in a room and you're actually jamming and vibing off each other, that's when you kind of get those kind of, I don't know, you kind of get these like happy accidents that happen. Like you develop parts, you make them more dynamic. You think about, there's just so many variables that come into play when you're just interacting with humans in a room, as opposed to just writing it on like a laptop and stuff. And then in terms of recording and, the way I like to make things sound is like I want the bass to fit very well between all the instruments and to really carry weight, to be punchy, to be aggressive, and not step on any instruments or vocals, but to like really, be a complementary part of the sound and the tone. And the same thing live, I don't like tell our sound guy, like, you got to turn my bass up or do this or that, but I bring a tone that like sits so well in the mix, and I try to play as consistent and tight as possible to make sure that I'm not the bass player that the sound guy turns down in the mix, but keeps up because it beefs it up and makes it sound good. So it's nice when I hear back live videos, I'm like, oh, cool, I can hear it. It sits in with the guitars and the beefiness of the drums, but it's got its place and it punches.
I think anytime somebody makes a negative bass player joke, the bass player should just sit out at that one gig and just so they could feel on how empty the song sounds
Yeah,
without it.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like I feel like maybe now too. I'm almost like I wonder if like I feel like the new crop of bands and stuff. I'm like maybe don't even think about it because I'm like there's so many good players now that it's almost like the bass player jokes are kind of like almost outdated because I'm like I see all these bands and I'm like well these all these players are so good now. There's so many good guitar players, drummers, bass players. I'm like everyone maybe those was afraid of those jokes and then got really good, you know, because
And now look at
you know.
Lemmy and Peter Steele. They got more girls than any guitar player
Oh
did.
yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, definitely those guys have a lot more swagger than any of the dudes that were around at the time. So you
yeah.
know, can't knock them for that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and your bass as well. Like your type of bass, like I feel like is almost an image of a Trivium live set. Like I can't picture a Trivium show without that bass body that you. What is your bass model again?
Well, I just switched over to Kiesel.
Oh, they have the
So
funnest booth at NAMM.
I've been playing them for this tour pretty much, but last record, or the new record coming out, I did on my Warwick, and so that was kind of like the last three albums were like my Warwick bass era. So now when I go to the next record, it's going to be the Kiesel bass era, and I'm excited for it because I really love these basses, and it's cool because like I've been really using like the same type of bass for a while with the Music Man pickups, and I just switched to a different kind of humbucker style that they had, and like I'm really loving it, and I can't wait to record something just so I can hear what it'll sound like on a recording.
Yeah, the Kiesel booth at NAMM is always the funnest booth. I can't tell you how many. It's been like a jackpot of interviews for me whenever I'm out there. I'm like,
Yeah, well, I hope. I don't even know. I think NAMM's happening next year.
In
I don't know
June-
if they'll need me out there or not, but
in June of
I
2022.
eventually, yeah, maybe I'll see you out at that at their booth.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating. It'll be great coming back home to New York City without catching hypothermia. But
Yeah.
so before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And
Of course,
again,
thank you.
for giving us some more new music at this time. Just after this tour, is there anything else you'd like to promote? Can we be expecting to see Trivium on the road again very soon? Now that you've all kind of, I feel like this tour was almost kind of like in a way like the guinea pig in a way.
Yeah, we were the guinea pig, I think. You know, probably not another U.S. tour until I would say April, May. Could be a little earlier than that. Just waiting. You know, hopefully it's the goal and the hope is that it'll be leg 2 of this tour. You know, but obviously Lamb of God and Megadeth are sort of in the driver's seat in terms of that. But it sounds like it's very possible. I think the success of this tour makes that tour more likely now more than ever. Because originally this was supposed to be like a 50-date tour. And then, of course, it got rescheduled, and then it got moved again, and then had to hack off half the dates. So, you know, we got to maybe figure out the next 25, 30 show dates of this tour, hopefully. You know, if not, we have some other ideas and plans. But definitely, I think next year, a lot of it will be U.S. touring. We got announced for South America, Not Fest next winter. So, you know, we got a lot of stuff to look forward to, but we also have some ideas for stuff we're going to do at home. You know, kind of early stages of planning another big event thing like a Light or a Distant Mirror last year. So figuring out some things with that. Now that we got the hangar, we pretty much got it finished just in time to start rehearsing for this tour. So now when we get home, we got a couple things to finish, and then we're going to get back to it with that.
And then we'll probably get a third Trivium album as well.
Yeah, we'll see. I think with these two albums, we're all kind of the mindset that we got a lot of material. There's a good momentum behind these albums, and it would be wise to tour a bit before we go into another album. Even though I like, if you told us like start working on an album, we would make one. But like we know we have to be careful with that. Like we'll probably start writing stuff a lot sooner, but I don't think we will release anything for a bit. So. You know, we'll have to put on our back to the drawing board, thinking about whatever the 11th album could be or should be. But I do hope, you know, it's inspired by all the touring we're going to be doing because, you know, doing a record without touring was interesting because I'm like, well, we get the same inspiration and energy going into a record, and I think we did. And but I do miss, having like tours to sort of like think about what you want to do. It's a good time for inspiration.
Yeah, like I was wondering, like, traveling and interacting with great people, and the constant adrenaline and all this has got to be inspiration for writing.
Totally.
But I do think that like isolation and uncertainty is also a great feel. So
yeah,
I think
it worked. It worked. Both worked for us. So we were happy during it. We were. We're a band that doesn't thrive on like negativity in the studio. Like with that, to us is not a thing. But the world around you having stuff going on can really lead to good artistic outcomes, I guess you could say. You don't want bad things to happen, but like things do, and you just you react to that in different ways. And ours is obviously through our music and lyrics and the live show we present.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Everybody, we are here with Paolo of Trivium. Be sure to check out their brand new album, Court of the Dragon, coming out October 8th. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.